Hi, sixth graders. This is Mrs. Gall. Today we're going to be graphing inequalities on a number line. Open up to a fresh page in your notebook and title it Graphing Inequalities. When you're ready to continue, press play. All right, you guys, this is a very important slide. Make sure you're writing down everything. I would really encourage you to pause if you need more time. I don't want the video to get too long, so that's why I really want you to utilize pausing if you need additional time to write. This slide is going to go through step by step how to graph an inequality. So that's why you want these directions written down in your notebook. The first thing we're going to look at is our inequality. A is greater than 6. We write that down, but you can write it down at the top. So you're going to have two things going on right now. You're going to have the area where you're actually graphing, and then you're going to have an area where you're writing down your step by step. So what you're going to notice is my area for the graph is going to be down here, and my step by step is going to start to release up here. So you just kind of need to portion out on your page where you want those two different pieces to be. So go ahead and write down your inequality. The first step that I want you to write down is we're going to make a number line. It only needs to have 3 numbers. We usually encourage 3 numbers. Here's what that looks like. Here's my number line with 3 dashes. The center number on my number line is always going to be the number that's in my inequality, which is a 6. That means I'm just going to go 1 below and 1 above on either side. So my number line goes 5, 6, 7. Pause if you need more time to write down the step and actually do the step like we did below. Okay, let's go on to step 2. After you've made your number line with 3 numbers, we're going to make a dot on the value 6, but there are 2 types of dots. Open dot is when we have a less than or greater than sign. That means the value is not included as a possible answer. Closed dots are used when we have less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. That means the value could be one of the answers. The value is included because it has the or equal to. So let's look at what we have. We have A is greater than 6. We do not have the or equal to. So that means A cannot be 6. So we're going to use an open dot since 6 is not a possible solution. So I'm drawing an open dot over the 6. Will you do that now and write down those directions? Pause if you need more time. We've done our number line. We've made our dot. The last thing we need to do is shade our number line for all the possible solutions that work for A. So A is greater than 6. So which way on the number line are the values going to work for A? Should we be shading down towards the 5? Would a 5 work if we put it here? No, because 5 is not greater than 6. Would a 7 work if I put it here? Yes, because 7 is greater than 6. So that means I'm going to shade towards the values that would work for A, up towards the 7 and all numbers that go past 7. So you can just shade. I usually do a squiggly line if I'm working in my notebook so you can really see it, but I just used a really heavy line to cover to show that that's the way that we shade it. What that means, you guys, is all values above 6 work for A. Pause if you need more time to write down. Otherwise, we're going to go on and just try more examples. All right, you guys, let's try some more examples together. We have x is less than 9. So I'm going to make a number line, step 1. Remember, we always have 3 numbers. So I'm just going to draw 3 tabs. And the center number is always the number in my inequality, which was 9. And then I just go down 1 and up 1 from 9 for my other 2 numbers. So that's step 1. Step 2 is think about our dot. It's an open dot if it's a less than or greater than sign. It's a shaded in dot if it's less than or equal to or greater than or equal to. This is a less than sign. So that means we have an open dot because 9 is not included in the list of possibilities. Then we need to shade. X is less than 9. So that means any number that goes here needs to be smaller than 9. So which way are we going to shade? We're going to shade towards the 8 to show that all values 8 and below would work in place of X. You can always check yourself by plugging that number in here and see if it makes sense. 8 is less than 9, so it made sense that I shaded towards the 8. Another example. N is greater than or equal to -2. Start by drawing our line. On our number line, we have 3 tick marks. The center tick mark is the number in our inequality, -2. You guys think about a negative number line. What's smaller than -2? -3. What's one greater than -2? Getting closer to 0, so that would be -1. So remember, on a negative number line, you really have to think about your numbers there. Next, we look at the dot. We have a greater than or equal to. So you guys, this time our dot needs to be shaded in because -2 would work as a possible solution. It could be equal to -2. So we shade it in to say, yes, you could choose that. Now we figure out which way to shade. N is greater than or equal to -2. So that means the values we place in for N should be greater than or equal to. So if a number is greater than, we're going to shade towards the right, up towards that -1, and anything past it. That would be our graph for N is greater than or equal to -2. K is less than or equal to 1.5. Why don't you start by getting your number line ready? Since we're dealing with a half, you can get kind of creative with what you count by on either side of 1.5. You can count by halves, you can count by 1 whole. Whatever you decide, just make sure you're staying consistent. Let's say I decided to count by halves, so I went to 1 because that's half less, and 2 because that's a half more. But you could have also done 0.5 and 2.5. As long as you're staying consistent, that's what matters. Should we do an open or a closed dot here? We have a less than or equal to, so that means that's a closed dot. K is less than or equal to 1.5, so that means if K is less than 1.5, we need to shade towards numbers that are smaller, like 1 and so on. Let's look at a fraction example. Y is less than 2/3. This is another one where you can kind of choose what you want to count by. Oops, that wasn't a very straight line. It's okay. So I'm going to add my 3 tick marks with 2/3 in the center. I can count by 1 whole or 1/3. Let's say I decided to count by 1/3. So 1/3 less than 2/3 is 1/3. 1/3 more than 2/3 is 3/3, or 3/3 is the same thing as 1. Okay, what type of dot would we do here? Open or closed? Open, because it does not have an or equal to. Which way should we shade? Towards 1/3 or 1? Well, y is less than 2/3, so we're going to shade towards values that are less than 2/3 towards the 1/3. That's my graph for this inequality. Okay, I want you to try, oh, this one's a little bit tricky. I want you to try to set this one up. And then if you want to try graphing, you can, but we actually flipped something here that's going to make the graph a little bit different. So why don't you set up the number line for this one? And think about what type of dot you would have. Hopefully you have -5 in the center. -6 is getting smaller, -4 is getting larger, so make sure you have that negative number line set up properly. You should have an open dot because it's -5 is less than h. You guys, this is where the graphing gets a little bit tricky. Focus on the h. Look at the way the symbol is facing when you're comparing it to the h. The open part is facing the h, so that means h needs to be greater than -5. So which way do we shade for h to be greater than -5? We need to shade to the right towards values that are greater than. So if it's ever flipped around where the variable is not on the left, it ends up on the right, really pay attention to which part of the symbol is facing the h. If it's the open part, that means h is greater than. If it would have been the closed part, that would have meant it was less than. You try this one on your own, really paying attention to what we just talked about with the flipping of the variables. Press pause for time to work. Press play when you're ready to hear the answer. All right, you guys, you should have had a number line with 6, 7, and 8 on it. You should have had a closed-in dot because this was a greater than or equal to sign facing the 7. This is where we think about the shading. Look at your M. What part of the inequality is facing the M? The closed part, so that means that's the less than. So 7 needs to be greater than M, or M needs to be less than 7. So that means we're going to shade towards values that are less than, and you can even check it, you guys, by placing this number that you just shaded towards, the 6, in for M and see if it makes sense. Is 7 greater than or equal to 6? Yes, it's greater than, and that's true, so that means we shaded towards the correct direction. All right, I think we've just got a couple more here. Why don't you pause and try graphing this one on your own. J is greater than or equal to -10. Press play when you're ready to see the answer. All right, you guys, you should have had a number line with -10 in the center, -11 to the left, and -9 to the right. A closed-in dot over -10 for because we had the or equal to sign here. And then it says J is greater than or equal to -10, so values that are greater than get shaded towards -9 and up towards 0. And one more. Oh, I guess that was my last one. I thought we had one more. All right, you guys, chat with your teacher if you have any questions about graphing inequalities. In our next lesson, we're actually going to start solving, and then we get to graph after we're done solving.